Little lady, this is a place for real men, not some lost tourist looking for a coffee shop. The words, thick with cheap beer and unearned authority, cut through the lazy afternoon haze. The crowd of leather-clad bikers chuckled, a low rumble of masculine approval. They were a wall of denim and chrome, and she was an island of unassuming solitude. The woman, Anna, didn't flinch. She didn't look up. Her focus remained on the task at hand, wiping down the engine block of her motorcycle with a clean rag. Her movements were a study in economy, each wipe precise, each fold of the cloth deliberate. There was no wasted energy, no theatrical flourish. Her bike, like her, was devoid of pretense, an older, dark gray machine, scrupulously maintained but utterly without flash. It was a tool, not a trophy. Across the sun-baked asphalt, Sheriff Brody sat in his cruiser, paperwork forgotten on the passenger seat. He wasn't watching the loudmouth, the self-proclaimed alpha named Razor. He was watching the woman. He saw her posture, the way she stood. Even as she leaned over the bike, her feet were perfectly spaced, her back straight, a relaxed but ready stance he hadn't seen since his days at Paris Island. It was a ghost of a memory, a flicker of profound discipline that didn't belong in a dusty diner parking lot. Something was wrong with the picture, and his gut, a finely tuned instrument after 30 years in law enforcement and the military, was screaming at him. If you believe respect is earned, not demanded, type earned below. Razor, emboldened by her silence and the laughter of his pack, took a step closer, his shadow falling over her. He was a man who mistook silence for weakness, a common and often fatal error. What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Or are you just too scared to speak in the presence of real bikers? He leaned in, his voice a conspiratorial sneer meant for his audience. He noticed a small, faded tattoo just visible on the delicate skin of her inner forearm, peeking from under her sleeve. It was a bird of some kind, holding a trident and a flintlock pistol. He scoffed, pointing a grimy finger. Look at this, boys. She thinks a little ink makes her tough. Probably got it on a spring break trip. The laughter grew louder, coarser. He reached out, his hand a greasy paw, and grabbed her arm. She didn't resist. She simply stopped her work and stood, her body a column of stillness. He felt no fear, no tension, just a strange, unnerving placidity. Annoyed by her lack of reaction, he escalated. He grabbed the shoulder of her plain cotton t-shirt and yanked. The fabric gave way with a harsh, ripping sound that seemed to silence the birds in the nearby trees. Still, she did not react. Her eyes, the color of a storm-swept sea, finally lifted to meet his. They held no anger, no fear, no hatred. They held nothing but a calm, analytical focus, as if she were measuring distances and calculating trajectories. This absolute absence of emotion was more terrifying than any scream would have been. The moment stretched, taut and brittle, until it was shattered by the shriek of tortured tires. A beat-up pickup truck, pursued by one of Brody's deputies, swerved violently to avoid a deer that had darted onto the highway. The driver overcorrected. The truck spun in a sickening arc, its momentum carrying it directly toward the diner's old-fashioned gas pumps. The impact was a metallic scream followed by a concussive whomp as fuel ignited. A blossom of orange and black erupted into the sky. Panic, hot and chaotic, swept through the parking lot. Bikers who moments before had been paragons of bravado scrambled backward, their faces pale with shock. Razor stumbled away from the inferno, his bravado instantly evaporated, replaced by the wide-eyed fear of a man confronting something real. In the heart of this chaos, Anna moved. The world seemed to slow for her, the screams and the crackling flames fading into a distant hum. The scene resolved itself into a series of objectives, threats, and assets. She stripped off the remains of her ripped shirt, revealing a simple gray tank top. Her movements were fluid, economical, a dance of pure, unadulterated purpose. While others fled, she advanced. She entered the diner, her steps measured, and returned a moment later with a large, red fire extinguisher. She didn't run. She moved with the steady, ground-eating pace of someone who knows that panic is the enemy of survival. Her calm was a force of nature in itself, a pocket of absolute zero in a universe of heat and fear. She approached the wall of fire not as a civilian would, but as a sapper would approach a bomb. She assessed the wind direction, the spread, the location of the main fuel source. She pulled the pin on the extinguisher and squeezed the handle, not in a wild, panicked spray, but in a controlled, sweeping motion at the base of the flames. She created a path, a corridor of momentary safety through the roaring heat. She moved through the shimmering air, a ghost in the inferno. The truck's door was crumpled, jammed shut. The driver was slumped over the wheel, unconscious. Without a second of hesitation, she inverted the heavy steel extinguisher and used it as a tool. She didn't smash the window wildly. She struck the corner with a single, perfectly placed blow, a precise application of physics that caused the tempered glass to spiderweb and disintegrate. Reaching through the empty frame, her arm wrapped in the remnant of her shirt to protect from the jagged edges, she unbuckled the driver's seatbelt. The man was heavy, a dead weight. With a display of core strength that seemed utterly incongruous with her slender frame, she hauled him out of the burning cab. She dragged him 20 feet, then 30, her boots finding purchase on the gravelly asphalt. Just as she cleared the danger zone, the truck's main tank cooked off. A second, massive fireball erupted, sending a shockwave of heat across the lot that forced everyone to their knees. Everyone, that is, except Anna. She was already kneeling, her fingers on the unconscious driver's neck, checking for a pulse. Sheriff Brody arrived on the scene, his cruiser skidding to a halt. His eyes scanned the chaos, taking in the burning truck, the scattered bikers, and the woman calmly administering first aid. He strode past Razor, who was staring blankly at the fire, his face a mask of disbelief. Brody's focus was singular. He approached Anna, his expression a mixture of professional concern and dawning awe. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked, his voice cutting through the noise. Anna glanced up, her gaze direct and professional. "He's got a pulse. Smoke inhalation, possible concussion. He needs an ambulance," she reported, her tone as flat and steady as a surgeon's. It was then that Brody saw it clearly. The ripped sleeve had exposed the tattoo on her forearm completely. It wasn't a bird. It was an eagle, its wings spread, clutching a naval anchor, a trident, and a flintlock pistol. The special warfare insignia. The SEAL Trident. Brody, a retired Marine colonel, felt a jolt of recognition so profound it was like a physical blow. His mind raced, connecting the dots, the impossible calm, the tactical precision, the quiet competence, the stance. It wasn't discipline learned at a boot camp. It was the ingrained essence of a Tier 1 operator. His entire demeanor shifted. The folksy sheriff vanished, replaced by the rigid posture of a senior officer in the presence of someone from a world few could even imagine. "Get me a name," Brody barked to his deputy, never taking his eyes off Anna. "Morgan. Anna Morgan." As the deputy relayed the name over the radio, Brody turned his gaze upon Razor and his crew. His voice was no longer conversational. It was a weapon, sharp and cold. "You see this woman?" he boomed, his voice resonating with years of command. "You see what she just did while you heroes stood there filming with your phones? You measured her worth by her size and her gender. You put your hands on her because you thought her silence was an invitation. You made an assumption. And in my experience, assumptions are what get stupid men killed." The radio crackled to life, the dispatcher's voice laced with confusion and awe. "Sheriff, the file on Anna Morgan is almost entirely blacked out. It just lists her last command. Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Status, retired, honorable. Commendations, sir, it's all classified DevGru. The unit, SEAL Team 6. A cold silence fell over the assembled crowd. The name meant nothing to most of them, but the tone of the dispatcher and the look on Brody's face told them everything. Brody turned back to Anna. He took off his wide-brimmed hat and held it respectfully over his heart. He drew himself up to his full height, his back ramrod straight, and executed a slow, perfect, full-dress salute. "Ma'am," he said, his voice thick with a profound respect that bordered on reverence. "On behalf of this town, thank you for your service." The story of that afternoon didn't just spread, it detonated. It traveled on radio waves, in hushed phone calls, and in wide-eyed retellings from the paramedics and firefighters who arrived to a scene straight out of a movie. By sunset, the tale of the quiet woman on the old bike was the only thing being discussed in every cop bar, VFW hall, and fire station in 3 counties. They didn't know her name was Anna. They called her the Trident. The story became legend, a modern folktale about the day a giant walked among them, disguised as an ordinary woman. It became a cautionary tale, whispered to new recruits and brash young men, a reminder that the most dangerous waters are often the stillest. The diner owner, a man named Sal, carefully retrieved the dented, empty fire extinguisher. He cleaned it, polished it, and placed it on a specially built shelf behind the counter, right next to a photo of his father in his army uniform. It became a shrine to quiet competence, a silent testament to the day that arrogance was met with action and noise was defeated by silence. The legend of what happened in his parking lot was now part of the town's DNA, a story to be told for generations. The next morning, Razor returned. He wasn't with his club, and he wasn't wearing his colors. He rode in alone, his bike's engine a respectful murmur rather than a defiant roar. He found Anna sitting at the counter, calmly sipping a cup of black coffee, as if the previous day had never happened. He stood before her, his massive frame seeming to shrink, his usual swagger replaced by a heavy, profound humility. In front of Sal and the few early morning regulars, he apologized. The words were clumsy, halting, but they were undeniably sincere. He offered to pay for the shirt, for her bike, for anything she wanted. He was a man stripped bare of his pretenses, his world reordered by an undeniable truth. Anna listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When he was finished, she simply gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "The shirt is fine," she said, her voice even and low. "Worry about the man from the truck." She offered no absolution, no anger, no lecture. She offered only indifference to his opinion of her, both then and now. Her validation came from within, forged in fire and shadow, and his apology was irrelevant to her sense of self. That, more than anything, was his final, most searing lesson. Over the next few days, she remained, helping Sal clean up the debris, her actions a quiet sermon on responsibility. Her competence was her creed, and her work was her prayer. Years passed. The diner was rebuilt, better than before. Just above the new glass door, a small, hand-carved wooden plaque was mounted. It depicted a trident, its tines sharp and clear. It was a silent marker, a nod to the town's private legend. Newcomers and travelers would sometimes ask about it, and Sal, or occasionally even Razor, now a quieter and wiser man, would tell the story. But the story they told had evolved. It was no longer just about a fire and a heroic rescue. It had become a parable about the nature of true strength. It was a lesson about the vast, dangerous difference between looking tough and being tough. The sheriff's department officially integrated the incident report, heavily redacted, of course, into their academy training. The Morgan case became mandatory reading, a stark lesson on the perils of tactical assumptions. Anna herself was long gone, having ridden out of town as quietly as she had arrived, a ghost on the highway. But she had left something permanent behind. She had not left a monument of stone or brass, but a legacy of understanding. She had taught an entire community that the loudest voice in the room is often the weakest, and that true character is measured not in words, but in deeds performed in the deafening silence of a crisis. True strength is never a performance. It is not found in the volume of a voice, the cut of a jacket, or the roar of an engine. It is a quiet, internal certainty, a calm forged in crucibles most people will never have to face. It is the steady hand in the chaos, the disciplined mind in the panic, the silent professional who does the work while others make the noise. Our world is filled with those who demand respect, who posture and preen and puff out their chests, believing that intimidation is a worthy substitute for honor. They build their identities on a foundation of sand, fragile and easily washed away by the first true storm. But authentic respect is not a thing that can be demanded. It is a current that flows naturally and irresistibly toward competence. It is an acknowledgement that can only be earned through action, through discipline, and through the quiet, undeniable proof of character under pressure. The legacy of Anna Morgan was not a medal on a uniform or a headline in a newspaper. It was a lesson etched into the soul of a small town, a permanent truth left in her wake. The most capable people are rarely the ones who feel the need to tell you how capable they are. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud arrogance, and where silent strength defines their worth, Subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.